Welcome back, everyone, to the Cube Pod. I'm John Furrier with Dave Vellante. Dave, salute from the Palo Alto studio.
Hey, hello, John. I just saw you this
And
week. Good to see you. I'm back east.
it gets double salute. Man, what? We're running on fumes. End of the week here, GTC, NVIDIA event in San Jose. The town shut down. The whole world watched. It is the $1 trillion NVIDIA AI factory land grab. That's my take.
Literally.
It is land grab. They had to take over San Jose. They took the land of San Jose away because it was so packed. They stayed in the hometown. Remember, they tried to move to Vegas with the Sphere. It was booked, couldn't get it. Moscone wasn't available, staying local. NVIDIA, Silicon Valley company. Everybody was there. It was the who's who in the industry. We were there, of course, feeling like I'm back in school, sitting in the room, getting all the presentations, hearing from Jensen on the private meeting. We couldn't record it. I took copious notes, but great event for the team. We had the whole CUBE team there, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what we've been riffing on and researching on NVIDIA. I learned a lot from the hallway conversations and many one-on-ones with their customers, partners, and it is very, very clear that NVIDIA is full throttle in the AI factory, and they're focused on money making, which this year was a big surprise. That was one of the top storylines, was monetization. And the second storyline was the emergence of OpenClaw. And to me, those were the two material points that stood out, because it's a sharp contrast, Dave, from what we're usually hearing from NVIDIA. NVIDIA normally speeds and feeds. Here's the next Blackwell, here's the Vera, here's the Rubin, here's the roadmap, ecosystem slide goes up, and it's kind of a discussion about CUDA, all the libraries. That all happened, but what stole the show was the emphasis on the monetization of AI and OpenClaw feeding the developer and actually showing a way for around an operating model around agents, which obviously, OpenClaw, they eat up tokens like it's nobody's business. So, tokens equals money, software eats tokens, tokens is the new architecture. Deep tech is replacing software, Dave. This is the big takeaway I'm seeing. And NVIDIA didn't fall short of having great content on Omniverse, robotics, and the system. So again, they hit all the normal boxes on NVIDIA GTC. However, they met and exceeded, in my opinion, the breakout areas of monetization and OpenClaw. I think that's going to accelerate more mainstream conversations. Keynote felt a bit rushed. It was long as usual, but he had to get a lot of content in from Jen. Jen had to get a lot of content in. So Jensen delivered another good one. Man, he was exhausted in our analyst meeting. He was on the All In. I saw him on Kramer. He's doing the booth tours. He's talking to everybody. He's pumping it up. He is much more of a cheerleader now, to me, as everybody wants a piece of him. He's getting claps and like a rock star. Yeah, so very interesting week. Again, I'm just laying out the high level view from my standpoint. I got a ton of observations to dig into, but they're tightening their grips on the AI factories. It's kind of commercializing, seeing build outs at epic proportions and neoclouds, but there's a lot of things that I see that could be problems. We'll get into it. Your take.
So, to me, John, the number one takeaway was the comment he made, quote, I see through 2027, I'm paraphrasing, at least $1 trillion in demand for Blackwell and Vera Rubin. So he said this in his keynote. Basically he said that demand was off the charts. And so what I'm trying to do is really understand what that means, because to me, that's, it's like doubling what he said last time, but I'm trying to remember, didn't he first make the $500 billion visibility claim during GTC DC, which was October of 2025? So I'm like, okay, 500, and at the time, I think he said he saw $500 billion through 2026. So now he's saying I see $1 trillion, and I think he said through 2027. So I'm saying, all right, well, wait a minute. In fact, I know he said through 2027. So I'm like, so he doubled the backlog, but he also doubled the time frame. So I'm trying to determine if this is as big a deal as I initially thought it was. Because when I first heard, I'm like, wow, he went from 500 billion to a trillion, but he also took it from 2026 to 2027. So is that why the stock didn't go up? No, probably not, because people feel like I think it's technically not trading. It's got like head and shoulders or whatever the technical guys say. And people feel like, it's run up. There's the war. So I don't know, but do you have any insight on that? I mean, am I right? Remember when he said that at GTC DC? We were there, and he said 500 billion through 2026.
Yeah, and that's
And
why
then
he
he
was.
basically doubled the number, but he also doubled the time frame.
Yeah, he definitely said that, but I think he's got visibility into the economics. And if you look at the growth of the NeoClouds, for instance, I think he might even be sandbagging even more. So, we don't know. And again, China sales are turning up. I mean, this is what, first of all, think about the historic run for NVIDIA, okay? They're hovering, north of 4 trillion in market cap, now projecting the 1 trillion you just pointed out. That's not just growth, Dave. That's category dominating, right? And with China sales restarting, there's even more upside baked in.
Well, China's not in there, by the way, nor are any of the products. This is just for Blackwell and Vera Rubin. So I understand that, but so was the previous comment in GTC DC. They were both, well, it was for Blackwell. So you're right. He's not including those other products. So there's definitely upside to there. I mean, I guess what it says is that demand is, not declining, which is where people are concerned about.
Yeah.
But you listen to Kramer's like divulging all this sort of, private conversations that he's having with Jensen. He's saying, Jensen was asking him about, 180 and there's quadruple option expiry today. So Jensen was asking him about that. Kramer implied Jensen was asking him about his stock price.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. Like, what do we have to do to get it up? So, but I'm just trying to understand, is this, okay, great. We now have twice the demand we had before, but again, he's extending the time frame. So that all that says to me is that 500 billion is steady. It's not declining. Now, he's probably sandbagging.
No, it's
he
definitely
used
not.
that term.
I think it's not the growth. I think it's what it is. I think, and again, I think there's headroom there. I mean, if you look at NVIDIA and the stock price, that's a Jim Cramer piece. And he probably has some good insights in his conciliary to Jensen. But on the tech side, what's interesting that we cover, not the stocks, but you look at the story there. To me, the real story, it's not the scale anymore, Dave, because they've already at scale, right? It's the strategy. He made it very clear in the keynote, to me at least, and he actually said things that we talked about on theCUBE in 2013. Horizontally scalable, vertically integrated was my words, our words on theCUBE. We riffed on that about the cloud. Where you have domains in the apps and you have horizontal scale with the cloud. He made it clear in the keynote that NVIDIA is now a vertically integrated computing company. He said that. Chips, CPUs, networking storage, models, orchestration software. It's being tightly engineered together in what he calls extreme co-design. This is Apple-like ambition, but for the data center. And not quite Cupertino, but it rhymes. But if he talks about the CUDA libraries and all the verticals, okay? So he's extreme co-designed the lock-in for the horizontal, okay? And he's locked in the CUDA libraries, which is handing out like free candy. And it's like drugs, first hit's free. It's like, I'll take all the content. The game has shifted. Right. And so with inference, these verticals are going to be heavily relying on these. And then that's obviously these verticals all have their own edge scenarios. Latency sensitive, massively distributed, not one chip. It's not a one chip problem anymore. It's a systems problem. So their strategy is really, really good. I mean, they have a great land grab strategy. Their co-design. You asked the question in the analyst program about the storage. Is that a prescriptive co-design?
Well, I want to talk about that too. But before we get off this trillion thing, I see a reference from Yahoo Finance that says that $500 billion claim was made in late 2025, but it was specifically defined as the visibility for the combined calendar years of 2025 and 2026. So if that's the case, we're talking about going from $250 billion a year to $500 billion a year. So if that's the case, then that is a huge deal. So, of course, the stocks keeps declining, which is beautiful.
And you're going to buy some more?
Because, well, look, I am an ultra bull on NVIDIA. I mean, I've never been as excited about a company since Microsoft and Intel in the 90s in terms of their ability to execute and dominate a business. So,
They're breaking all the standards. I mean, even at 4 trillion. Remember when they crossed the 1 trillion mark? I was like, oh my God, NVIDIA is the most valuable company. And they're at 4 trillion. Okay, so,
well,
you know, the most people are like, whoa, it's reached the top. So, that, you know, to me, I think there's a long game for sure for NVIDIA. If
well, but so
land grab
think about
continues,
this.
they will
Think about
own
this though.
everything.
So Kramer got Jensen to basically admit that they could be a $10 trillion company, market cap wise. But yeah, think about it. I mean, I say only it's because there's 4 trillion. They're actually over 4 trillion. That's actually a, 2.5x. So it's great, but it's not like a 10x, a 10 bagger. Um, so I think that's potentially why the stock's not, acting better on that news because people are like, well, how far can it go? Because large numbers. I actually think it could go a lot higher than 10 trillion. It's great. I mean, it's semiconductors, right? So at some point, there's going to be a supply and demand imbalance that flips the other way, and it's going to get ugly, and that'll be a huge buying opportunity for people. But
Not just
I just think
semiconductors,
that
it's the systems. You look at Dell. Dell's got record
of
earnings.
course. But I mean, look, they're in the business selling GPUs. I mean, that's how they make money, let's face it. And I know there's a lot more than that. There's software and there's all kinds of other, instruments around it. There's the full systems, but their raison d'etre is selling GPUs. Let's not make no mistake about it. That is the mainspring of their revenue.
And
but I mean,
GPUs everybody wants, and that's you control the supply. And build the systems. That's a lock-in spec. It's a land grab. I mean, with the enterprise, I mean, look at the growth of the NeoClouds. They're now increasing the number of hyperscalers that are out there. That changes their game too for NVIDIA. If you're NVIDIA, you're like, hey, I don't have to deal with Amazon. Although Amazon announced this week that they're buying, tons of GPUs. Look at the number was pretty massive amounts. NVIDIA is just creating the marketplace, the rising tide. They are the tide, and all the boats, all the buyers.
Did you shared that Gracely and Aaron Delps, Brian Gracely and Aaron Delp, good friends of theCUBE and SiliconANGLE. You sent me that podcast, their new format. It's good. And Aaron Delp asked, he had Irwin on from Lambda, right? Lambda? No, from Crusoe. What am I saying? From Crusoe, and asked him about the term NeoCloud. You just mentioned NeoCloud. Well, it's funny because CoreWeave doesn't like the term, but I thought that Erwan made a good comment. He's like, look, at least signifies something new and different. So I thought that was kind of.
And we had a great conversation with Lambda in the booth. I mean,
yeah, you did a great job there for sure.
We need more Lambdas for sure.
So anyway, I'll come back to extreme co-design. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because when I first heard that term, I inferred that they were talking about co-designing with the ecosystem. And so we pushed on this. But the fact is, they co-design inside of NVIDIA. And I asked a question, which Kevin, crapped on. He basically, countered it. But I don't buy it, his response. But anyway, he's just kind of putting on his marketing hat. But basically I said is extreme co-design, and my understanding is it's you guys do that across your internal portfolio, and then you basically prescribe to the ecosystem. I didn't say dictate. I could have said dictate, but prescribe to the ecosystem how to play there. And his point was where, to your point you just made, we're vertically integrated and horizontally scalable and open. But the fact is, I'm sure they consult with the ecosystem, but I think with their extreme co-design is, I don't know what percent, but it's probably 90% plus their own internal efforts. I don't think they're sort of diluting their internal efforts by going out and trying to create consensus with the community. I think they're basically saying, here is the way you do it. And unlike the way VMware did it, which was, tell us, for instance, the VAI and the VASA storage APIs, they said, tell us, for example, how you do space-efficient snapshots, NetApp, or Dell, or 3PAR, or Compellent, and then we'll orchestrate it for you through vSphere, where this is, I kind of said it, this is why he bristled, you know, thou shalt use DP, Bluefield 4 to offload the CPU. You know, thou shalt do RDMA this way. When scaling at, at rack scale, here's how you will deal with KV cache. You know, they're very prescriptive. And I say dictate with tongue in cheek because it is prescriptive, but if you don't follow the NVIDIA playbook, you're screwed. You're foolish and you're in trouble. Now, there are ways to differentiate, and obviously if you're a competitor, you're not going to just follow their playbook. But if you're like a storage vendor, or an ecosystem partner, a software company, you better hop on board this train or you're going to get, disintermediated and disrupted.
I mean, the key to the NVIDIA this year and the co-design is the training side. I won't say it's left the station. It's definitely there. Inference changes everything. It's real time, latency sensitive, massively distributed. Again, like I said, before we came back to the $1 trillion thing, it's not a one chip problem anymore. It's a systems problem. So it's not just GPUs, it's the interconnects, it's the networking. And so, they got Grok now. So when you have inference, okay, we talked about the edge at MWC, hyperconverged edge. They're rolling out Grok LPUs for inference workloads, but they're pairing the Vera CPUs with the Rubin GPUs with Grok. They're doubling down on Spectrum X networking. So they're expanding that with AWS, like 1 million GPUs. I mentioned that earlier. That was the order I think I was referring to. This agentic AI thing really kind of changes who they are. So the question is it an iPhone moment for NVIDIA right now when you get Jensen really getting on the bandwagon for OpenClaw? I mean, that's not something I had on my bingo card. I mean, I knew he would like it. Everyone loves it because it changes how software is developed, which is an NVIDIA first principle. But, he's all over it and he's really focused on that. So it speaks to me that's very Apple-esque, Dave, that NVIDIA is starting to look like they're very much, not like selling hardware and a MacBook or an iPhone, but they have such a software advantage. And I think, to me, Jensen's co-design is going to shift to this whole software revolution that's going on with code, Claude, and these things that are coming out in OpenClaw. The software industry as we know it is shifting to deep tech. So these systems, the Vera Rubin systems, which is designed for inference, it's not just the GPU, it's everything else too. So it's not a one chip, one thing problem. So, deep tech is starting to becoming dominant in the conversation, which is great for us because we love talking about deep tech.
I know.
And the impact is not just deep tech as a science project, it's deep tech that's driving revenue. So again, my point earlier, his monetization comment, making money, and then the claw points to NVIDIA starting to think, hey guys, we're making money for people, come into our platform, come into our land grab, come into our systems, and they set the table beautifully. And not like they're faking it, they're not hand waving. It's a lot like AWS, reminds me of the early days of AWS when they started to ramp up, it just never stopped. And I think NVIDIA is on that train. I think you're right, it's I'm super bull too on NVIDIA. I mean, technically and architecturally, it's there. Now it's, where's the money? Show me the money.
So a couple things. I mean, the NemoClaw, him pounding the table on OpenClaw was a bit of a surprise to me. And when you talk to the NVIDIA people, they're all using OpenClaw in their own personal, endeavors and in business. And I'm like, wow, you guys trust that stuff? Giving access? I mean, we've talked about my son, and he's got his Mac Mini, and he basically has the Jason Calcanis set up in his apartment with, OpenClaw, and he's, of course, got the, agent core as well. But at any rate, OpenClaw, he was really positive, saying this was a ChatGPT moment. Now, it's in his best interest to, of course, say that, but you've got this open source stack, and NemoClaw adds privacy and security clause. So it's, kind of, which was the missing piece, I guess, of OpenClaw. So he's adding those layers. But the way, John, he pounded the table on the importance of OpenClaw and NemoClaw was a bit of a surprise to me, but when Jensen speaks, you got to pay attention.
I mean, the surprise was it's not in the weeds NVIDIA engineering kind of thinking, computer science. By the way, he didn't say computer science once on stage. Tokens, he said many times.
Remember, I took the under
But
on
with
your 6.
with the OpenClaw, it's running wild right now, and everyone's doing the Mac Minis. But they got the DGX box, which costs like $5,000, and it's not going to be popular. But it could be a dark horse, as we heard. But if you think about OpenClaw applied to agentic, and you think about the enterprise, you have to have an open shell thing like they announced, which I think is genius. NVIDIA was smart to grab this in because, again, agents love to eat tokens for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They will feed on tokens till the cows come home, as they say. So, okay, take that forward. If you're in the enterprise, there's no way in hell anyone's going to use OpenClaw because of security. So, guess what? You got an AI factory. You're going to have NVIDIA CUDA libraries. You're going to have tokens to be used, MCP servers, A2A. You're going to have to go through and do things. For example, I saw a demo from our friend Atatouche from Cisco. He's been in NVIDIA now for years. The demo king, remember he was at DevNet at Cisco's.
I do.
He showed me a demo where an employee could be on their home OpenClaw and go, prepare my taxes. I only want to pay this much in taxes. It could actually do all the work from the local data that he's got on this home network or PC or whatever, and then go across to the enterprise, access the stock option plan, HR, CRM systems, pull that in, and it just seamlessly. I interviewed the day you went up to Palo Alto for a meeting. I had a meeting with Rev, who runs Omniverse. After the interview was over, he works for NVIDIA. He's been coding since he's been 6 years old. He's awesome interview, great technologist. He was playing with OpenClaw. He got a DGX box. He used the other DGX box, and he said, how do I set up this DGX box? Went to OpenAI, showed him how to plug it in. Once he plugged it in, he had OpenClaw said, how should I use this? And it just configured the other DGX box. And then he had to crawl his home network. He's got cameras. He's got a big place, obviously. NVIDIA's rich. He's got cameras, automated systems, ring doorbells, automated gates. And he basically, with not writing a line of code, from his Telegram chat, he coded an entire dashboard for his house, an app.
Just by talking to it.
Just by talking to it. And he was beaming when he was explaining this to me. And he gave me the demo, flipped up his phone. He had that flip Android phone. And it was a full, beautiful dashboard. Pressing a button, that's the camera to the backyard. That's the camera for the front door. That's the gate to open for the cars. Okay, super cool, right? Then he goes, my friend's staying with me this week, and I'm not there, obviously, because I'm too busy here. And he wanted to know the code to the gate, and he didn't want to give him access to his dashboard because his whole house was in there, right? He had everything running on it. So he told OpenClaw to write him an app for his friend that had one button called Enter. No code. He says he didn't write a line of code. So this is the impact of having a connected system. Now, granted, his home was networked. They had cameras everywhere. And he gave me that example to illustrate that in NVIDIA, he's an engineering manager. So instead of just telling people what to do, he writes the code with them. So you have a whole nother level of why people stop coding. I stopped coding because I didn't have time. And then the syntax change, but you don't really stop learning how to code. Once you code, you're a good coder. Or once you code, you're whatever level you're at. So like, I never coded because I stopped coding over 25 years ago. Okay, what does that mean? That means I don't know the syntax, I don't have the tools, but now there's no tools. It's voice activated. And so it's a complete different game. And I think OpenClaw is a good analogy to call it the operating system for agents, because if that's the case, and that's their narrative, and I think it's true, the enterprise needs security. So NVIDIA rolling over OpenShell, and this piece is super critical. Agents will still be a hobby. It'll be kind of like a drug, a tech drug for everyone under the age of 30. If you're under the age of 30 and you're using OpenClaw, it's like the tech version of drugs, right? Everyone's doing it. Right. And everyone that I know that's under the age of 30 is playing with OpenClaw.
So I like the way Jensen put it. He said in the old days, you would ask search, what is, how does, how much? And today you're saying, build me, create, make this for me. And you're speaking to it. And it's just a whole different, paradigm. So yeah, I guess I do understand why it's so exciting. I wanted to share with the audience a couple other things that Jensen said that in case I don't know who wouldn't be listening to this, but he said, in addition to that trillion, he said computing demand has increased by 1 million times in the past couple of years. And then he said, we're now a computing platform that runs all of AI, basically framing NVIDIA as the backbone of the entire AI economy, not just a hardware provider. Correct. Agreed. CPU is no longer simply supporting the model, it's driving it. He highlighted that Vera Rubin CPU rack architecture is designed for superior inference performance. And so obviously the Grok 3 LPX announcement was a big deal. That was kind of one of the highlights for me. I had sent, I don't know if the team can put it up, I had sent earlier the slide that he told us in the private analyst session was the most important slide that he showed. I don't know, guys, if you can put that up. I probably can't. I didn't see any response from you, but I just sent it like 5 minutes before the CUBE pod, so you probably can't. But so imagine on the vertical axis you have throughput, and on the horizontal axis essentially latency, but it's really responsiveness, or think of it as customer experience. And then he showed sort of the last two generations, Hopper, Blackwell, and then Vera Rubin, and showed, normally what you would see as your latency goes down to the right, your throughput tanks. And he showed this for the first two generations, and he showed it also for Vera Rubin. What they did with LPX Grok 3 is they added in Grok. Of course, they paid $20 billion to essentially acquire. It was kind of an acquihire to acquire Grok. They've now extended that latency curve, or that responsiveness curve, way out to the right. So it doesn't, it flattens, but it doesn't tank, right? It just doesn't fall off the cliff like you would normally expect. Why is that relevant? A couple things. One is the original Jensen's law that we wrote about was buy more, save more. And then it become buy more, make more. Why? Because if you're power limited and your network is underutilized and you're doing training and you're being able to charge for that, sell your GPU time, the next generation saved you so much money in cost. It was essentially, you get the network economically free, and you're basically doubling or quadrupling your performance, 5xing your performance. So you're making more money. What he introduced at GTC is that horizontal axis is a new, to your point, monetization model. And you made really good points about this earlier, and I just want to emphasize it so people understand it. On the left-hand side, he basically said, this is freemium. So think, consumer chat. And then this is, you pay a little bit, think $20 a month, or maybe it's $200 a month. And you're getting, great reasoning. In the future, he's saying you're going to get that reasoning, virtually instantaneous, or you're going to say, go off and think for a longer time, and you're going to get much better answers and reason about it. So as you went right on that curve, on that horizontal axis, that was the high end, think Anthropic with coding and codex and future applications. And that's where you're going to be charging a lot because people will pay up for it. And what he said was really important. He said, every CEO in the world needs to understand where they fit on that Pareto. Are you making money through throughput, by throughput? Are you making money through customer experience, i.e., latency and responsiveness, or both? Because that is the future revenue model. And the last thing I'll say to that is, and we've been saying this now for a while, that at the macro, organizations spend on average 4% of revenue on tech. That number is going to explode. They're going to be spending 10%, 12%, 15% of revenue on tech. Why? Because they're going to be able to scale without as much labor. and they're going to be developing new revenue streams as a result of tapping into token generation through APIs, accessing intelligence via tokens, via APIs. That's where they're going to spend money, and it's going to shift from legacy, provisioning IT to generating and applying intelligence. And that's profound.
Yeah, I mean, my reaction to that is one, that's a major advancement for NVIDIA's capabilities. They're basically introducing tiering, essentially. You want the high-end stuff, pay more, because if your model's tied to revenue, it's worth it because you get an advantage because speed wins, right? So if you're doing something else with your system, then you want to be in these areas. It's a great option. It's a portfolio approach, Dave. They're just giving more options and letting people pay for what they want that's relevant to their needs. The other thing that I would say, and it's more of my observation from the physical AI side of things, is that if you look at these verticals, these horizontal, scalable capabilities, plus these vertical entities I mentioned earlier, and you pointed out kind of now they have the Pareto chart to kind of pick performance, price performance kind of selection, which is classic IT technology thinking. I know people, hey, you can buy this processor and it's entry level, mid-range, high-end kind of thinking. So like they got that going on. I love that. The thing that jumps out at me is the economics involved on physical. If you look at the physical world, and if you look at the IT market, trillions of dollars, what's it, 15 trillion, some number?
No. IT,
Technology spend.
so
Technology.
Jensen said 2 trillion. I would include communications in that and
Throw it
double
all
it.
in. Anything
I'd say
that's
it's
technology
four. I'd
related.
say the
Total number.
the IT and communications, ICT, information, ITC, information technology and communications market, I would put it 4 trillion.
Yeah, so just say, pick a number, make it 5, okay? Just say anything that technology touches that's sold, whatever you want to put that in kind of a global bucket, pick a number, say 5, maybe 10 trillion. That's pale in comparison to the physical world we live in that has not yet been impacted by AI. So the conversation I had with some NVIDIA folks on this, on the physical AI side, was mostly on the Omniverse kind of and robotics team, is that the money to be made from AI is not just technology vendors selling stuff to IT or this, that, the other thing. It's the real world is going to be impacted. That's in the trillions and trillions of dollars. It's a step function magnitude, huge number. Like it's a huge number, right? So like, and that's what Michael Dell was telling us on theCUBE at one time. It's like, hey, there's so much more money to be made that hasn't traditionally classically called technology impacted. So I think there's so much opportunity because if inference goes to the level we think it's going to go in every device, every edge node, to the far edge, wireless, humans, robotics, homes, everything's impacted. Dry cleaning places, retail. They're not buying technology, but they're using AI, right? So that changes some of the thinking around the total number and size of that market. I mean, it's just like, it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't come up with a number.
So let's game that. So, I mean, let's take my 4 trillion number. I would say the physical world, you could 10x that. So the TAM becomes 40 trillion. And it probably is bigger than that. And then the other piece of it, and the reason why we're so excited about NVIDIA, we heard this in some of our private meetings when Jensen told the team, we will be on a 12-month cadence. Remember that conversation? And the team was like, huh? No, we're going to do it. You just got to figure out how. So Feynman is the follow-on to Vera Rubin. So this is the thing that, again, I don't think people appreciate the exponential curve that we're on here. It basically going from Hopper to Blackwell to Vera Rubin to now then Feynman. Each year you're seeing. I mean, from Vera Rubin, Jensen shared. It's like 1/10 the cost. It's like 5x the, the performance, 10x the throughput. I mean, it's just incredible. So what does that all do when you lower the cost because of Jevons paradox, which kind of was first reintroduced by Satya when everybody went, negatively crazy because of DeepSeek. He's like, no, no, this is actually a really good thing. Prices go down, demand goes up. And I think like every generation, demand goes up 15x. It's incredible. And to your point, because there's so much more opportunity in the physical world, that expands the TAM enormously, which is why we think NVIDIA is so undervalued. So this 12-month cadence is unprecedented. And it's why I feel like whether it's TPUs or Trainiums or AMDs or even, ASICs and from Broadcom and others, they are going to have a hard time keeping up. Having said that, what I like about that is they have differentiable strategies from NVIDIA, AWS, obviously Broadcom, Google. They have differentiable strategies, and they will find demand for those products, especially when NVIDIA is supply constrained. So it's not a zero-sum game at the infrastructure level. I don't think the market's going to support all these, semiconductor startups, but certainly the hyperscalers will play. Um, but the point I'm making is NVIDIA is on a pace that is, you called it this going at the speed of NVIDIA. They are setting the pace for the industry. And you have, if you're going to compete, you're going to have to try to keep up with that. Your alternative and have a differentiable strategy like Broadcom has, which I believe they do. No question they do. Or you're going to have to do what Michael Dell is doing and hopping on the NVIDIA bandwagon and differentiating through your superpowers, which are supply chain and, engineering around systems and obviously the customer relationships, et cetera. And each company has to figure out its own strategy in that regard. Oracle obviously has a highly differentiable strategy. Software companies, I think, many will succeed. The analytics companies like Snowflake and Databricks. So many opportunities are being opened up if you pivot to this new model, which kind of brings me, I'd love to spend some time, we're getting tight on time. STX, let me just say, NVIDIA, as we talked about earlier, redefined the whole storage hierarchy. The storage hierarchy goes from high speed memory to, maybe less speed memory, but still super high speed, to maybe less, low power memory, KV cache. Oh yeah, down what used to be called tier 1 storage, right? Like EMC and
Tier 1 became Tier 4
NetApp and
overnight.
PDN. It's like tier 4 now. And that's okay. They still make money at that. It's not archiving per se, but it ain't tier 1 anymore. And so
Well, I think
you've
that's
got
different
to,
language. I mean, that's different language. Tier 1 is HBM, that kind of
right.
point. But
Right.
it-
But we used to call it tier 1. We used to call it EMC symmetrics. That was tier 1 storage, right? With with a big cache and a big spinning disk back end. But obviously that changed. And flash and pure storage was considered tier 1.
yeah.
3PAR used to argue. Remember Craig Nunes? We're tier 1. You remember those arguments we used to have all the time with those guys? And so, okay, we remember we'd write pieces on what defines tier 1. Well, the pyramid, the storage hierarchy is changing quite dramatically. The point being, you've got to adapt and pivot and do R&D to be able to take advantage of the NVIDIA architecture, number 1. And 2, I firmly believe you have to come up the stack, which, others doing. You're certainly seeing VAST do that. VAST doesn't even talk storage boxes. They talk AI.
Everything's collapsing. I mean, everything's collapsing. Storage
Dell,
storage is changing, right? So it's getting closer to the GPUs. I just published a scoop here in Palo Alto, a company called Resolite AI, came out of stealth from Israel. Ofer Shapiro, CEO and co-founder. They've cracked the code, looks like, on CPO and photonics processing. If this works, this makes celestial AI look like a has-been. So
really?
This is going to be complete game changer. Check out the video. It's on the SiliconANGLE handle, TheCUBE, youtube.com/SiliconANGLE. I just put it up. I'm going to write a post on it. But I really don't get into it now. It's too much, not enough time. But I'm going to do a whole segment on that. And Dave, we have so much content on thecube.net. We did it all day Sunday, pre-GTC with all the best people, heavy hitters, Caruso, Solidigm, we had DDN,
Lambda,
Lambda, we had everybody
NVIDIA,
on.
we had NVIDIA,
And
we had, I mean, it
everybody
was
was
just
on. Check
unbelievable.
those videos out. SiliconANGLE had tons of stories. Check out Dave's breaking analysis this week. I had a bunch of posts up on LinkedIn on Jensen's keynote. We got a lot of coverage from the SiliconANGLE team, the CUBE team, the CUBE research. So check that out. And next week we got RSA full throttle with the CUBE. Cybersecurity will be a big event. It's one of the biggest cybersecurity shows for us in the year. KubeCon, we had ChainGuard. We've got Google Next coming up, but next week RSAC is happening. KubeCon in Europe, EU, check that out. So Dave, we're back into the window. So RSA preview, I'm not going to be there. You will be hosting with the team.
Yes.
I have an exclusive CFO gathering. I'm hosting an event at the New York Stock Exchange next week. I won't be at RSA. I got Jim Cavanaugh, IBM CFO, and the top CFOs coming together, but I'm going to miss RSA for the first time in a decade.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm heading my breaking analysis, doing it with John Olczyk to do a preview there. And we got a full lineup at RSAC. I'm so excited. We'll be in Moscone West on Media Row. And right in the first floor, right on ground floor, we got our CEO series. We got, we do this every year. George Kurtz, Jay Chaudhry, Nikesh Arora, Nick Schneider, so on and on and on, all these great CEOs coming in. So super excited about that. We'll have practitioners coming in, CISOs, folks from the field, from all walks of cybersecurity lives. Some analysts coming on our show. So yeah, stop by and see us. I'm sorry you won't be there, but back to San Francisco for me.
All right, well, the agent game continues, and then this week was in NVIDIA, the $1 trillion AI factory land grab. Dave, enjoy RSA, have a great weekend, chill out, reboot, then jump on a plane back to California. All right, we'll see you next time.
All right, see you. Bye, everybody.